On a Pacific reef, they built a city out of stones the size of a car. Somehow, with no machinery, no writing, and no explanation that has ever survived, they moved them. 1,000 years later, the city is empty. And the reef keeps asking the one question the modern world still cannot answer. How? 2,000 miles from the nearest continent, in the western Pacific, there is an island called Pohnpei. It is small, mountainous, drowning in rainforest. And along its eastern shore, half swallowed by mangroves and tide, sits something that should not exist. 92 artificial islands. Built by hand. Built on a coral reef. Built out of stone walls that in places rise 7.5 meters, as tall as a two-story house, and stretch on, islet after islet, for more than 1.5 miles. The locals call it Nan Madol. The name means, the spaces between. Because the whole city is threaded by canals. There are no roads here. You move by canoe, through a grid of tidal waterways, past black stone walls that lean over the water like the ribs of some enormous animal. Europeans stumbled onto it in the 1800s and refused to believe what they were seeing. Surely, they thought, some lost race of giants had built this. Or a vanished European colony. Anything but the ancestors of the people living quietly on the same island. They were wrong. And the truth is far stranger than the myth they invented. But before we ask who built it, we have to understand what it actually is. Because the numbers alone break the mind. The walls of Nan Madol are not made of carved blocks. They are made of columns. Long, prism-shaped pillars of black basalt, each one 6-sided or 5-sided, formed naturally when ancient lava cooled and cracked into geometric rods. The builders stacked them the way you would stack logs for a fire, one layer running one direction, the next layer crossing it. No mortar. No cement. Nothing holding them together but their own colossal weight and the genius of how they interlock. And some of these columns are enormous. The largest weigh around 5 tons apiece, the weight of a full-grown elephant. Some estimates run higher still. Now multiply. Add up every column, every wall, every foundation across all 92 islets. Archaeologists have tried. The total mass of basalt in Nan Madol is estimated at around 750,000 metric tons. 750,000 tons. Moved by a Stone Age society. No metal tools, no draft animals, no wheels, no writing to keep records or draw plans. On an island where the population, even at its peak, was likely only in the tens of thousands. That is the weight of roughly 2 Empire State Buildings, quarried and carried by hand. And the precision is what unsettles the archaeologists most. These are not rough boulders piled up any which way. The columns interlock. Their natural 6-sided geometry lets them nest against each other so tightly that after 1,000 years, through earthquakes, through typhoons, through the relentless push and pull of the tide, the walls have not fallen. They were engineered. By people we are told had no engineering. And here is where it gets impossible. The basalt did not come from where the city stands. The quarries are on the far side of the island, some of them across open ocean. Which means every single one of those columns had to travel. And nobody knows how. Picture the problem. You are standing at a quarry on Pohnpei's rugged coast. In front of you is a 5-ton pillar of solid rock. Your job is to get it across miles of jungle, reef, and open sea, and set it precisely onto a wall rising out of a tidal lagoon. You have rope made from plant fiber. You have wood. You have hands. That is the entire toolkit. The leading theory is that the builders floated the stones. They may have lashed the columns beneath rafts or between canoes, letting the buoyancy of the water carry most of the weight, then rode the tides around the coast to the building site. It is plausible. Pacific Islanders were among the greatest seafarers in human history. But when researchers actually tried it, when modern teams attempted to raft heavy basalt the same way, they struggled. The stones were unstable. The rafts wanted to capsize. And that was with steel cable and modern boats. And rafting only gets the stone near the site. It still has to be lifted, up onto walls 2, 3, 7 meters high, and slotted into place with a precision that is held for 1,000 years of earthquakes and typhoons. No cranes. No pulleys that we can prove. The most common suggestion is that the builders used inclined ramps of earth and coconut palm trunks as rollers and levers, hauling each column up the slope of a growing wall. It would have taken enormous, coordinated labor, sustained across generations. But it is inference, not evidence. No ramp survives. No tool marks tell the full story. So the honest answer from archaeology is uncomfortable, and it is this. We have good guesses, but we do not actually know how they did it. The people who did know left no manual. They left something else entirely. They left a story. When outsiders asked the Pohnpeians how Nan Madol was built, they did not describe rafts or levers. They told a legend. Two brothers, sorcerers, arrived from across the sea to found a sacred capital. And to raise the great black stones, they did not carry them at all. They chanted. And the columns rose into the air and flew to their places on their own. It is easy to dismiss that as fantasy. But listen to what the legend is really telling you. It is saying, this was so far beyond ordinary human effort that even the people who inherited the ruins could not imagine muscle and rope achieving it. The only explanation big enough was magic. The brothers were named Olisipa and Olasopa. And in the memory of the island, Nan Madol became the seat of a dynasty called the Sodeler, a line of rulers who governed all of Pohnpei from this stone city. For centuries, the Sodeler held absolute power. They demanded tribute. Food had to be brought to the city by canoe, because Nan Madol grew almost nothing. It was a capital of ceremony and control, a stone stage for the theater of power. Priests, nobles, and the dead all had their islets. One was reserved for royal tombs. Another for the sacred ritual of preparing kava, the drink of the elite. The whole city was a machine for turning stone into authority. But absolute power tends to curdle. The Sodeler, the legends say, grew cruel. And that cruelty would summon the one thing that could end them. The oral histories tell of a hero named Isoklikal. He came from the east, from the island of Kosrae, with a band of warriors, and he came to overthrow the last of the Sodeler. According to the story, he succeeded. The old dynasty fell. And a new order took its place, one that eventually broke the single throne into smaller chiefdoms. Whether that invasion happened exactly as told, we cannot prove. But we do know the ending. At some point, most likely in the 17th century, Nan Madol was abandoned. The canals emptied. The stone terraces fell silent. Why? Nobody is certain. Perhaps the population fell too low to sustain a city that had to import all its food. Perhaps shifting politics moved the center of power elsewhere. Some researchers point to climate, to changing sea levels or drought stressing an already fragile system. The city that took centuries and 750,000 tons of stone to build was simply left. Not destroyed. Not buried. Left standing, and let go. And here is the detail that still gives archaeologists chills. Even the people who lived beside it grew afraid of it. For generations, Pohnpeians treated Nan Madol as a place of ghosts. To spend the night there was taboo. To disturb the stones was to risk the anger of what remained. Even now, some islets are approached with care and permission. And beneath the waterline, the mystery only deepens. Divers exploring the channels have reported basalt foundations plunging down into the coral, walls and structures below the surface, as if the city extends underwater. How much of Nan Madol we have never fully mapped, no one can quite say. So the reef keeps its secret. We know roughly when it was built. We know who ruled it. We can name the heroes and the tyrants of its legends. But the central question, how a Stone Age people quarried, floated, lifted, and locked 750,000 tons of basalt into a city on the sea, has never been answered. Only guessed at. Nan Madol is not a ruin that gives up its story. It is a ruin that guards one. And maybe that is the point, that somewhere out on a Pacific reef, human hands did something we still cannot fully explain, and simply walked away. If this reshaped how you think about the ancient world, subscribe. We reconstruct a lost civilization every week.